Close your eyes and go back to being 8 years old. Not the memories you've told so many times they've turned into stories. The small ones. The ones nobody talks about. The sound of the screen door slamming behind you on a summer morning. The specific weight of a Saturday with nowhere to be and nobody looking for you until dinner. The way a whole afternoon could disappear into nothing, and somehow that was the entire point. Those moments didn't feel special when they were happening. That was the whole thing. They were just Tuesday. They were just life. They're gone now. Completely and quietly gone. And most of us didn't notice until it was already too late.
Is that Daphne?
Yes?
Hi, my name's Ramsey, Shane Ramsey.
Yes, Mr. Ramsey?
We're having a bucks party for a mate tonight. I was wondering if you'd be available.
Calling your friend's house and talking to their parents first. You picked up the phone. The heavy coiled, attached to the wall phone. You dialed the number you had memorized because there was no other way to know it. And someone answered. Not your friend, their mom, or their dad, or occasionally a younger sibling who would hold the phone in silence for 30 seconds before dropping it. You said hello. You said who you were. You asked if your friend could come to the phone. You waited. This experience is completely extinct. Not just uncommon. Gone. There is not a single child alive today who has ever called a friend's house and spoken to that friend's parent first. The entire social layer of navigating the adult at the door before you got to the person you actually wanted, that's just over. And something small was lost in it. That brief moment of being seen by someone else's family. Of being known not just to your friend, but to the house they lived in. You were a person to those parents. You had a voice they recognized. Sometimes they asked how your mother was doing. Sometimes they told your friend to be home by 5. You were part of a fabric that went wider than just the two of you. Text messages go directly to the person, which is efficient, which is fine, which is nothing like what we had. Getting lost and having to figure it out. Before GPS, before Google Maps, before your phone could tell you in real time exactly where you were standing on the surface of the earth, you got lost. On family road trips, you got lost. Your dad pulled out a paper map the size of a tablecloth and spread it across the steering wheel and drove at the same time, and your mom held one corner, trying to find the exit you already missed. In new neighborhoods, you got lost. You made a wrong turn and kept going until something looked familiar, and you figured out where you were by recognizing a water tower or a church steeple or the shape of a hill. And here is the important part. You did figure it out. Every time. Getting lost was not a crisis. It was a delay. It was an inconvenience that you solved using nothing but attention and logic and the willingness to stop and ask a stranger at a gas station. There is an entire skill that lived inside that experience. Spatial thinking, landmark memory, the ability to hold a mental map of where you'd been and where you needed to go. Children who grow up with GPS never build that skill. Studies have started to confirm it. The part of the brain that handles navigation begins to atrophy when it's never asked to work. We outsourced getting lost to technology and lost something real in the process. Waiting for your favorite song on the radio. You could not choose what came on. That was the whole deal. You turned on the radio and you listened to what was playing. And if it was a song you didn't care about, you waited. You did your homework, or you cleaned your room, or you just sat there, because the song would end and something else would come on, and maybe it would be the one. And when it was the one, when that opening note hit and you recognized it in the first half second, the feeling was different from anything you can replicate by pressing play on a streaming service today. Because you didn't choose it. It came to you, like a gift from a stranger who happened to be paying attention. Some kids in the 1980s would sit next to their radio with a blank cassette ready, finger hovering over the record button, waiting for the song they loved so they could capture it. Waiting for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, a half hour. And sometimes they'd miss the beginning by half a second and have the DJ's voice over the intro, and it was still the best thing in the world because they got it. The entire modern relationship with music is built on instant access and unlimited choice, which sounds better, which is objectively more convenient, and which produces none of that feeling, not even a trace of it. You cannot manufacture the feeling of something arriving. You can only wait for it. And we stopped waiting. The summer of nothing. 6 weeks, 8 weeks. The entire summer stretched out in front of you like a country with no map. No camps scheduled back to back. No enrichment programs. No structured activities to fill the hours and justify the season. Just time. Enormous, unscheduled, slightly boring time that you had to do something with. You built things. You dug holes in the backyard for no reason. You made up games with rules that changed every day. You read books from the library that you picked out yourself, with no one recommending them to you. You spent 3 days trying to build a ramp for your bike and then used it twice and abandoned it. You were bored. Actually, genuinely bored. Bored in the way that makes your brain start manufacturing its own entertainment, because there is nothing else coming. Researchers who study childhood development call this unstructured time essential. It is how children learn to tolerate discomfort, how they develop internal motivation, how imagination gets built, not taught, but built, the way a muscle gets built, through repeated use under no supervision. The 1980s child had summers full of that. Full of long, slow, slightly miserable afternoons that turned into something unexpected by 4 o'clock. The modern summer is scheduled from the first week of June. There are waiting lists for the good camps. Every hour has a purpose, and the boredom that built a generation has been replaced with productivity. We meant well. We really did.
The next report I did was for my science class on the human body. Look at all this great stuff. But this time I wised up and made it just the length my teacher asked for.
Britannica and not knowing the answer. If you wanted to know something, you had to want it badly enough to go find it. You went to the bookshelf where the encyclopedia set lived. Those heavy, gold-lettered volumes that your parents had paid a significant amount of money for, and that sat on their shelf as a kind of promise to the children in the house. The promise that knowledge was available, that it was close. You pulled out the right volume. You flipped to the right section. Sometimes you found exactly what you were looking for. And sometimes you didn't find the answer at all. You closed the book and you sat with not knowing. You carried the question around for days. Maybe you asked a teacher. Maybe you asked your grandfather. Maybe you just lived with the uncertainty. There is something in that experience that no one could have predicted losing. The ability to sit comfortably inside a question. Today, any question a child has is answered in 4 seconds on a device that fits in a pocket, which is a miracle, a genuine miracle, and which has quietly eliminated the experience of wondering, of carrying a question like a stone in your pocket, turning it over, waiting to find out. The answer used to be a destination. Now it's just a reflex. Talking to the same people in your neighborhood every single day. Your world was small, specific, made of people who lived within walking distance. The woman on the corner who knew your name and your parents' names and had an opinion about how tall you were getting. The old man 2 streets over who would give you $1 to rake his leaves and tell you a story about the war while you did it. These were not people you chose. You did not follow them online. You did not curate your access to them. They were simply there, adjacent to your life, and so you knew them. That structure, the neighborhood as a social ecosystem, dense with accidental relationships and unplanned interaction, has largely dissolved. People in cities and suburbs often don't know the names of the people directly next door. Children are driven to play dates with pre-selected friends rather than wandering into whatever the street offers. What the 1980s kid had was proximity. The slightly uncomfortable, uncurated, unavoidable proximity of people who were simply near you, and learning to exist alongside them, to negotiate and argue and reconcile and share space without any option to log off. That is gone. Not entirely, not everywhere, but mostly, quietly, block by block, renting a movie and committing to it. Friday night, the video store. You drove there as a family, or you went with friends and you walked the aisles looking at boxes. Cardboard boxes with painted artwork and taglines that were always slightly more exciting than the film turned out to be. You picked one, or you argued about it until someone gave in, or you grabbed the last copy of the one everyone wanted just as someone else reached for it. And then you went home and you watched it. The whole thing, because you only had it for one night and returning it unwatched felt like a waste of the trip. No skipping around, and no checking your phone during the slow parts. No abandoning it 20 minutes in because something better was available. You rented a movie and you watched it, and that was the evening. The commitment changed the experience. When you couldn't pause and restart, you paid attention differently. When you only had one night with it, you were present in a way that infinite streaming does not require. Be kind. Rewind. That little sticker on every cassette. It wasn't just a reminder about tape. It was the last instruction in a small ritual that shaped an entire generation's relationship with stories, with choosing, with showing up and staying. That ritual ended. The stores closed one by one through the 2000s, and the last one went quietly, and almost nobody noticed in time to mourn it properly. None of these things are coming back. Not the streetlights rule, not the Saturday cartoons, not the summer of nothing, or the video store, or the encyclopedia on the shelf. They are gone the way things go when the world moves on and doesn't look back. Not because anyone decided to get rid of them, just because something newer arrived and took up all the space. But here's what stays. The feeling of that bike turning around when the light came on. The specific silence of a summer afternoon with nowhere to be. The sound of a song arriving on the radio when you weren't expecting it. Those are still in there, somewhere behind everything that came after. Still whole, still yours. Tell me in the comments which one you felt the most. Not just which one you remembered, which one you felt. I'll read every single one. And if this took you somewhere today, subscribe. There's more where this came from. I'll see you in the next video.